Good morning, viewers. Today is Monday. It is September 15th. It is 4:45 in the morning. I was able to get these notes together actually yesterday, after I finished reading this book yesterday morning, because I was watching my beloved Jets play the Bills, and it was so disastrous. I got to spend more time looking down at a computer screen typing up these notes than I was watching a good game, because that was atrocious. But anyway, we have the next installment of the Splatter Westerns for you today. This is Hell's Cargo. And it is written by Michelle Garza and Melissa Lason. Lason, I'm not sure how you say it exactly, but Melissa Lason. I believe they are twin sisters. And they're known in the industry as the Sisters of Slaughter. So they do splatter, they do horror, they do a lot of this stuff together. This might be my last splatter western for a while. The only two westerns I have left on my shelf over there is the first two editions of the Christopher Triana Coyote trilogy. I believe the third one will be coming out, so I'm actually holding off on reading them until I get all three to just knock through at one time. So this is going to be the last splatter western for a while. And again, if you're new to this, splatter westerns are a type of western horror. They typically add a little of the macabre, they add some supernatural, or just downright magic in the middle of their stories. And this one leans into that big time, and for its credit as well. This one, they have a big complex weave in their story, you know. It sets the stage early enough in the past, and then brings us to like years later when unfinished business becomes a plot point. And I'll tell you all what I can, because I also try to believe in being anti-spoiler as much as I can. And then I'm going to end this video with the usual, I can't believe there's so much editing that is not done in these books. It's become a staple from this publisher. And I feel that this one, unfortunately, has been the worst in that regard. But don't let that color what I'm about to say about the book, or to the story up to this point. Maybe I'll try to timestamp that section in the comments below if you just want to end there, or maybe just jump to it. That's up to you. Well, we get right into it in this book. Okay, you have a character who's on a horse, and he's just racing, and he's tearing ass like the devil's on his heels. And the man himself is kind of like falling apart with sickness. The old horse he's riding, sweat just dripping from his back, and it's run hard. In fact, this guy has like tuberculosis, or consumption as they call it, and he's like coughing up a lung on the back of the horse. But he has to get somewhere. He just wants to live long enough to get rid of this ornate wooden box that he's traveling with. And then, because he's introducing the box, we get a little backtrack. He lets us know why the box is so important. We learn that the box itself has traveled like across the Atlantic, and a Russian had brought it into the tuberculosis ward, or consumption ward as they say, and when he got there, he kind of like died immediately. So no one knows about the box, what it's for, is it good or bad, nothing. And the box was taken by a nurse and put up on a mantle. And another nurse opened it, and peeked inside, and whoosh, this entity just enters into her. And now, she proceeds at nights to like run naked through the ward, and she starts banging as many patients as possible. Until one day, she just dies horribly. And this, let's just say, demonic slug erupts from inside of her, and it slides across the ward and jumps back into the box. So right there, you get this, okay, kind of what the fuck aspect of the story, because you have no idea what to expect going forward now. So, with the intro and with the graphic nature of the behind the scenes regarding the box, whatever else, you see what the problem is and why the man on the horse is trying so hard to, like, hide this thing somewhere safe. And we're rooting for the guy. You know, we want him to get rid of the box and save the world-ish in a way. Even though we know it's got to get fucked up somehow. Otherwise, it would be a very, very short book. But we get to ride along the journey of what goes wrong. So far, so good. Decent enough intro, right? Then we take a brief... Next chapter jumps us over to a character named Eve. Young girl. She's very, very afraid of storms. Storms become a very big element of the story. She's living in a convent-esque area, like a new church or something like that. She's probably going to become a nun when she gets old enough. And we know that she's very, very fond of another boy named Peter. We also know in this church, there's a nun named Abby. And we then get to find Abby's relationship to the story. You know, she loves Eve, tries to take care of her as much as possible, tries to raise her as well as she can. But then through Abby, we get to go back in the past again, because part of her character is she's got like scars on her arm. And she wants to tell us why through her flashback. So she recollects her past, and then we go backwards. Flash 2, small Texas town or something like that, and a flash flood occurs with a storm. And the whole town kind of congregates up on a church on a hill, you know, because the hill is above the floodwaters. They should be able to, you know, wait out the storm while they see the destruction that happens down below. And it's a small town. So everyone takes refuge into Father Connor's new church, or just a church, not a new church. And there's a small family who comes up to the top of the hill. It's like a man, a woman, and a baby, but they won't come inside the church. And they just want to stay outside. There's like a tree towards the edge, and they just want to stay there amidst the storm. And as the writing comes along, you know, Abby has a problem with this. And long story short, she gets people to go out there, let's get the baby inside. Even if they won't come in there, the baby should not be out in the storm. And chaos ensues. And all of a sudden, there's a monster out there, which ends up being the woman turned into a monster. Killing people left, right, and center. Kind of werewolf-ish. But it's not only a werewolf in the story, it just happens to take that form now. Highly, highly protective of the child. But they fight it, and they mainly lose. Father Connor himself brings himself into a standoff with the demon, and the demon taunts him, because he's trying to exorcise the demon out of the woman. But Abby gets control of the baby, which almost saves her, because this thing is like raking claws through people, and doesn't want to rake her, because she's got the baby. And she does find herself with a gun, bang, shoots it in the eye. And the whole monster kind of falls off the cliff's edge. Which Father Connor did not want. You know, he wanted to exorcise the demon. He wanted to save the woman. Just get rid of the demon. So they realize that the woman's body probably dies from the fall and the gunshot. But the demon will probably escape and find something else to inhabit. And in the meantime, they raise the child. Child joins them in a new church in Louisiana. And the child is Peter. We fast forward a little bit. Or go back to kind of present, maybe a little before present. And Peter's older. He's a trusted associate of Father Connor. Even assisting him sometimes with exorcisms. And this is how that box that held the demon kind of comes back a little bit into Father Connor's orbit. The demon, after falling off the precipice, had returned to the box. It was opened by someone else, was able to travel to and fro over the years. Now, they're in a place where the demon had already sucked dry some other wife of some guy, And they have to do the exorcism, and it kind of like gets back into the box. And while transporting it in a moment of weakness, Peter opens the box to peer inside. Eventually, this thing enters into Eve. And it feels that it can do very well to corrupt Eve, this innocence of a woman. And it can find a way to not only corrupt Eve, but through Eve and Peter's love, drive Peter insane, which is just an added bonus. And eventually it wants to find its way back to Father Connor and finish what it began back in the rainy hilltop when Peter was just a baby. So what follows, more or less, is the debauchery of what this demon plays inside of Eve. How it seduces her. How, through her, it even seduces Peter. And they have their carnal knowledge of one another. Sister Annie helps out as much as she can. And they find a way eventually to anesthetize Eve, so they can kind of like tie her up. Because they figure, let's keep her sedated, and let's see if we can send out a letter to Father Connor. He's in California now. Tell him we're bringing her to him so he can exorcise the demon out of her. But in order to travel with her, we got to like tie her up or throw her in a box or whatever we got to do. But we have to get her there quietly. But we also know that the girl has to eat to stay alive to keep her strength up. So it's going to be a tricky journey. It's going to take days, if not a week. So they get her on her nearest stagecoach. And the stagecoach is going to drive them some ways to a train station. And they'll rail all the way over to California. Okay. Well, as they say, if you ever want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans. Through trickery and the such, and the fact that sometimes when you're traveling, people don't want to see a woman tied up, anesthetized, catatonic, whatever you want to call it, Eve gets loose. A lot of killing is involved every place that Eve gets to as well. And then Eve is pretty much in charge for the remainder of the journey. Or should I say the demon inside Eve is in charge. A journey which Eve, through the demon within her, keeps banging Peter and killing as many people as she or it can every single stop they take. And her easiest plan that she kind of does along this whole trail is, at night, walks into town, finds the local brothel, finds a whore, kills her, and any customers that she might have around her, bunch of other people as well. Maybe switch out bloody clothes from whatever Eve was wearing to one of the whore's outfits in the closet. And then, they call that shopping sometimes. And then possibly burn down the saloon or burn down the brothel. Because, like I said, the demon wants to get to California, but it also wants to have its fun, and it wants to have its fun with Eve too. And this happens town after town after town, to the point that they think that the townsfolk start hearing about this, and they start thinking like this whole section along the railroad is like Hell's Corridor. And you don't want to be on Hell's Corridor because who knows what's going to happen to you any night at all. Now, I realize I'm giving this to you on a quick sum up at like 30,000 feet. If I went through it blow by blow by blow, there's a lot of Eve loves Peter, Peter loves Eve, which eats up a ton of real estate in the first and second acts. I'm blowing past all that with barely a reference because it's a lot of Oxygen Network, Hallmark Channel, innocent love, which never manifests itself into anything, yet they both have a longing for each other. And that is an important motivation for Peter to keep Eve safe, even with the demon inside of her. But it doesn't carry much in the retelling to keep the audience riveted, in my opinion. And the town-by-town violence is just that. It's a variety of clever ways to seduce townfolk and then rip them apart in very, very imaginative ways. And while Peter tries to convince the demon to stop it, that it doesn't need to do this. But then the demon's like, yeah, I will do this. And you'll let me do this. Or I'll tear apart your sweetheart from the insides. And then he goes out and does whatever it wants. And they even give you some moments where the demon talks to Eve, and Eve tries to backsass, and then the demon would internally grab her ovaries and twist and cause her tons of pain. She's like, I'm going to capitulate. I'm going to do whatever it is that you want. Eventually, at one of the last stops, Eve actually convinces the demon, hey, why don't we just kill the cattle on the ranch and leave the people be? It'll be a change of pace. Anyone following us will stop following us because we've obviously not done this. We only kill people kind of a thing. And that way the trail of horrors they've left behind them on each stop won't lead those authorities any closer to them. And they can distance themselves from anything that may interfere with them getting to California. And then she also says, and we can actually have fun with the killings of the animals too, so it'll still be, people like, oh my god, what the hell's going on? And you get your jollies off that way. So they give in to the idea. So Eve wolfs out, does graphic killing of the cattle, morphs back, cleans up in a water trough, and puts her clothes back on again. You see, because she knew there'd be no whore's clothes that she can just shop for and change into, so she took off her own clothes before any of this happened. But someone saw this happen. And then later on, there's even a character that we thought was killed earlier. He's actually been chasing them for a while, but we didn't know it yet. He arrives in the town. And simultaneously, there's a couple other characters kind of shoehorned into the story. Something about a couple that wants to rob the Wells Cargo money box. See, it's not Wells Fargo. It's Wells Cargo with a C. Totally different. And the girlfriend of him convinces the man to, steal Wells Cargo's payload. He actually drives the cart for Wells Cargo. And he hopes he'll do the job. And she hopes he'll do the job and then just take all the money away from him for herself. And all of these characters kind of in the town at one time. Oh, including Father Grover. He's actually made it this way as well. Big climactic scene all ready for you right there in the middle of the town. And then, what am I to say? You get the lynch mob together who hopes to kill the girl. We get another rainstorm coming in. There's a mishmash of the happenings in the town as the climax comes too. And then it all splats together into an ending, or a trick ending, if you will. Brings all the different elements, combines them together. You have the confrontation. You've got everything you need. Bada boom, bada boom. And I say that, my friends, is the story of the last release of the Splatter Westerns. It's a larger one, comes in at 266 pages. It's released on August 13th, 2024, so only about a year ago. Not exactly the one to go on to kind of finish this foray into the new genre of Splatter Western, but it does fit the genre that it's written into. And now, at 19 minutes, let's get on to the shit editing that was done throughout this novel. I tell you, I told my wife about this too. When she originally went to bookstores, when I told her I was interested in this stuff, and she never has an idea of what to get me as a gift, she went looking for some. And the thing is that retailers normally don't have these, but some people might have known about the genre. It's you have to get them online at Amazon. And of course, we share an account, so she had to get it through her brother and have it shipped here. But they knew about it. They heard about it. Some of them liked them. And they even told her, they gave her comments about editing. Blatantly misspelled words. extra characters filtered in there, poorly worded sentences. And I've talked about this pretty often, but, and I'm sad to say this really did strike me as like the worst of them when it came to that. And just wait until you hear my final thoughts on this subject. So, where to begin? And by the way, I'd gotten in the habit of dog-earing pages that have errors on them as I'm reading it, so I can always go back to it and reference it later on for like my notes and videos like this. And I don't know if you could see this in the video, but look at all the dog ears that I have throughout this book. All those little gaps is a dog ear. And I even dog eared the bottom sometimes because it would help me know it's on the bottom of the page, or maybe I have two on the same page. But let's go through what I found so far. On page 6, very first one, very early in the book. For some reason, this is going to be washed out. This ain't going to come through anytime soon. There is a greater than sign. You see that right there? Boom. That little caret, side caret. It's a greater than sign. It's a symbol. Doesn't mean anything. And you think maybe they're in there sometimes as a clever way of putting parentheses, but if you only have one of them, that's a problem. Just a few sentences later, okay. There's a line. And the sentence says, you can make it a little longer. This is the guy talking to the horse. Like, come on, girl. You can make it. You got it. And the sentence goes, you can make it a little longer, then you'll be on your own. But it's not typed as then you'll be on your own. It's then you'll be one your own. So added an extra letter in there from on to one. Then you'll be one your own. And doesn't make any sense. And then on page 7, the very next page, this is where something else I notice pretty quickly happens often during this book. It's like a lack of punctuation. Sentences that appear that they should have a pause between thoughts, but the sentence just runs straight through it. So here's the example. Guy's talking about how, like, he'll kill these people, but not those people. But he never killed a child or woman. No matter how evil some of them could be, only other criminals died by his hands. And I could see no matter how evil some of them could be, like that aspect of the sentence makes sense. I've never killed a child or woman, no matter how evil some of them could be. And then there should be a pause or punctuation. Only other criminals died by his hands. And it's written just as no matter how evil some of them could be, only other criminals died by his hands. It's just run right through. And it kind of makes the sentence structure a little confusing. And when I got there, I actually had to reread the sentence a few times to get the full gist of the meaning and go through it. Starting on page 19, this is where you notice an inconsistency in the use of spaces. Typically, when you have like a comma or a semicolon, there's a small one character space after and separates the thoughts. And here you have a whispering her whole life, comma. No, she always heard the whispering her whole life, comma, but as she grew older. And there's no space between life, comma, but. Like, it's almost like one word. And, pardon me. And I'm writing this up, by the way, on WordPad on my laptop. It even red underlined that section. It's letting you know you have a problem here. I know for a fact this also happens using a very simple word processor like WordPerfect. It does that. It gives you underlines in red or blue or green depending upon what it finds. And you'll just see it plain as day. And in fact, when you're done with your document, you can F7 it and it will go through your whole document and find any instance of anything. And this, by the way, happens throughout the novel. They will use spaces normally, and then they will not from here and there. And in fact, it got to the point that I was seeing it so often, I stopped dog-earing those pages. But as I was going through, this page 19, 49, 66, 70, 147. It's all over the damn place. There's a moment on page 67 where between two sentences, there's a string of 5 ones. That's all it is. 111, 111. And it's like, okay, I'm not exactly sure what you were trying to do here. It's not part of a sentence, but it's just there. And I think what ended up happening, has this freaking wash, and I'm not good at this yet. Right there. And I think what ended up happening was sometimes, so usually the paragraphs are separated by this little mark. I don't know if it's supposed to be a tear, if it's a saber for some reason, which has no bearing on the story whatsoever. But there's some little, like, we're going to break up the chapters with this from section to section or scene to scene. A couple times, not often, it was done with like 5 asterisks. I don't know if it was supposed to have been taken out and changed, but instead of, I mean, and the asterisks only happened like 3 times throughout the whole book. So I think that was probably a mistake, and these ones are certainly a mistake. So, someone may have been saying, hey, whenever this happens, put the graphic in there, but they fucked up. Misspellings. Chapter 8, page 86, spelled the word experiences wrong. Page 118, spelled the word frantically wrong. 141, I mentioned before, they talk about a guy who we thought died and comes into the town. Girls talking about him. Handsome dude. He had a smile that many girls' hearts. Instead of saying he had a smile that broke... I'm sorry. He had a smile that broke many girls' hearts, is what the sentence should have said. But he had a smile... He had smile... he had smile that broke many girls' hearts. Again, sentence structure. It shows up on the word processor. Every second the demon dwelled inside of her, whispered to her, showed her the seedy parts human existence. Peter felt like he was becoming less appealing. This is page 164. And I think this type of run-on sentence has like 2 bad parts to it. The second is what I mentioned earlier. Just before Peter felt like he was becoming, looked like there should be a break there. A pause of some kind. Comma. Semicolon. Some such. But the first part showed her the seedy parts human existence. Showed her the seedy parts of human existence. Showed her the seedier parts of human existence. Not sure what she was supposed to throw into the sentence grammatically, but what was physically typed at the end wasn't supposed to be what it was. One of the times, she goes into town, finds a bar, decides to go take care of things there. People are playing poker, and when she walks through, the table was quiet. Probably the table was quiet. Same letters, different order. But if for some reason the table was quite what? The table was quite dirty, quite filthy, quite high off the ground. Quite doesn't work there. Page 191, and I've seen this once before. There's a priest flagellating himself. Actually, it's Peter. And what he's trying to do eventually is he's going to be naked. He's going to keep cramming his privates with a switch, hoping that if he pains himself so much, he won't have sex with Eve the next time she wants to come into him, because it will hurt too much. And the first instance says, oh, Lord God, my sins of the flesh, I destroy my flesh. One quick sentence. And then later on, a couple lines. Lord God, my sin of the flesh, I will destroy my own flesh. You see, the second one works. I have a feeling the first one was left in, and they moved it lower in the sentence structure, but forgot to erase it. Because the sentence just doesn't look right to say, my sins of the flesh, I destroy my flesh, as one blurt out. You know, page 235, a missing dialogue quotation at the end of a sentence. Just, at this point, you just notice everything that happens. And the last one I'll talk about is page 246 near the end. He moved his hand until his palm was over where Peter's heart should have been beating. It was 2 is still. It was 2 is still. I get the gist, but that sentence makes no sense. It was 2 still. Fine, get rid of the is. It too was still. It was 2 still. I mean, it's just... A was and an is, and it was 2 is still is just not a right sentence. So... And I'll tell you, there were other dog ears throughout this when I was typing up my notes watching the abysmal Jets play. I just didn't list them down here. They may have been on the too petty side, because I went back through reading the page it was dog-eared on, and I couldn't tell why I did that. I know there was something in there. But there were some, like just others, that kept happening over and over again. I just passed it to get on with this. Editing. It just doesn't exist here. Okay, here's the kicker, though. I mentioned before, I have a final thought on this subject. Part A. As I've said, I've seen on many, many other splatter western books the atrociousness of the lack of editing. And it's just the standard when you go through these. But in this case, we've got 2 women at the helm. 2 sisters. The fact that they're women is irrelevant. I didn't mean to say it like that. But it's not just the one author didn't read his own work or her own work. We're talking about 2 authors. So they both missed it. Now, they're twins. Maybe they have a very like mindset. I don't know this whole twin magic thing that goes on. But the fact that there's 2 of them makes it twice as worse. And B, this really took the cake for me. In the acknowledgments. This is what is written in the acknowledgments. And to Anna and Zoe for doing amazing edits. We are so thankful for all your amazing work. So there were edits done? And they were thankful for them? I don't get it. Okay, I'm going to end things here. I actually have to go somewhere soon, even though it's only 5:20 in the morning right now. I have to get prepared. But there you have it. This was Hell's Cargo. If you're into splatter westerns, if you like horror or whatever else, give it your own shot. All right, go find this on. You can definitely get it on Amazon. I'm sure you can get it in plenty of other places. You can probably get it directly from Death Sky Publishing, but their imprint of Death's Head Press, which releases these, the website's been stagnant as of late, unless something dropped in the last couple days. So you can buy it through them, maybe, if it's even being monitored. I don't know. I can't tell you. I've even seen them on eBay. People are reselling things out there. In fact, I got a stack of them. I have a listing on eBay too. But in the meantime, hey, listen, enjoy the rest of your day. I'm very happy I was able to do another one of my book reviews. I got 3 more on my desk. Hopefully I can knock them out. Unfortunately, there's not another game for another week, so I can't do it in front of that and collect my thoughts. But in the meantime, thank you very much, and I'll see you soon enough. Bye-bye.